Gutierrez.
Yes, sir.
Welcome to Speak Up St. Louis.
Thank you for having me.
Oh man, this is exciting. Just being able to have you in the space. I know we had talked about this a little bit just a couple months ago.
Yep.
I mean, of course, we've known each other prior to the podcast, but to be up at CAM, or I should say the Contemporary Art Museum St. Louis, acronyms are not, everybody doesn't do well with acronyms. Mm-hmm. It's okay. But it is, nice to be able to see the conversation that we had a couple months from now, earlier, being able to grow into this fuller conversation about who you are, what you're doing, and all the other things we'll get into in this conversation. So, yeah, thanks for being on. So if you want to start by just sharing a little bit about who you are and what it is that you're up to.
Mm-hmm. My name is Patrick Gutierrez. I'm currently 26 years old, living in Dutchtown, St. Louis, the south side of St. Louis. Half Costa Rican, half Honduran, first generation here in the United States. What else? Let's say went to Melanphy, Compton, Drew, went to Metro for 2 years and transferred to McKinley. And graduated 2016, went to Webster. That's where I met you.
Yep.
And but the only thing is that I did not finish my degree at Webster. I had to take on a lot of responsibility, just really stabilize what was going on behind the scenes.
Right.
And just all around artist when it comes to, initially it was like music production, line art, just any kind of drawing, mainly in the realm of the things that I liked most, which was logos of artists and musicians, and then eventually using those images to create products.
Mm-hmm.
And those are pretty much the realm of things that I've done thus far that has brought me to where I am today.
Yeah, and so being able to watch your practice and journey kind of change from a distance, I think one of the things that has been a constant or even consistent for you is, well, one is right there on your shirt. You rep Dutchtown. You rep the South Side.
Yeah.
Talk to me about what it sounds like growing up on the South Side, because we also have different stories of folks. A previous episode, Mike Cole, talking about just his relationship to South St. Louis City, mm-hmm. And what that means to him. So could you unpack that a little bit of what does maybe the South St. Louis City, but maybe more so in particular Dutchtown, mean to you in regards to your larger journey?
Yeah, I'm going to give you some backstory. Prior to Dutchtown, I was born in 97. My parents, got it how they could. We were originally in Dutchtown, in these apartments on Merrimack, in over there by Morgan Ford, if you know where that mm-hmm. is. And then eventually we moved to the Shaw neighborhood when I was in elementary, and then we moved when I entered middle school, and that's when from middle school to present day, I lived in Dutchtown, South City. And for me, the significance of it is that there, how should I say? It is developing, impoverished. It's struggle. It's community. It's a whole lot of things. But I feel like I was in the vicinity of it, but I don't ever feel like I was immersed in it per se, mm-hmm. because that's where I live. But like I mentioned earlier, I don't really have relationships with the neighbors like mm-hmm. that, or there isn't too much camaraderie over there as far as my experience. And then, it's a huge mixing pot for sure. We got different generations of immigrants over there that settled. via like the International Institute and other means.
Shout out to the International
Yeah,
Institute.
I
Those are
actually
good-
used to
good
work there
folks.
too. Yeah.
Shout out to Carlos and the team.
Yeah, so I feel like because there was like a lack of like strong commerce or any kind of, and this is my perspective.
For
If
sure.
other people have different perspectives, that's theirs. But for me, I didn't see any like anything popping in Dutchtown. There isn't any like just establishments that I felt could influence a generation or a community for me. And it's just been where I've been. And as I leave my home, I go into all these other spaces, and it's clearly like my interests are different, my accessibility to maybe goods and services are different, my exposure was always different. I had to find my liking mainly through the internet. So that's just where my like stronghold is. That's my foundation. I had to reinvent myself multiple times in this neighborhood, and I feel like over the years I've been able to increase my personal value so that I could in turn one day be able to bring value to the neighborhood. But at the same time, I also don't want to be geographically restricted to Dutchtown.
Right.
I just know it to be my training grounds, my foundation, and it's definitely a part of like, the saying, is beauty in the struggle, J. Cole's line.
Yeah, so thanks for like kind of sharing that, like that sense of location, because I think, like you said, for different folks, depending on the timing and where and when you're growing up in St. Louis, obviously everybody has a different relationship to it, especially for yourself, as you were saying earlier, this, I don't want to necessarily call it eclectic, but you are going to a lot of different parts of St. Louis, from McKinley to Dutchtown to all these different areas as well too. And so I'm curious on like, especially, you were touching on, being first generation as well too. Like, talk to me about this sense of place, but more so this sense of home, because that's what I'm really curious on, because like you said, you're reinventing it and you're figuring that out for yourself, and it changes, and it changes over time as well too, and that's totally fine. But what does this sense of home mean for you? And I'm also curious on like, what's that relationship maybe even between yourself and your mom as well too, in the sense of home, because home for you is totally different than what it is for her.
100%. I would say I'm fortunate to know what back home looks like. Let's say like my mom's place of origin, Costa Rica. I've been there since I was a child, and periodically throughout my years. Last time was in 2016 when I graduated high school. And that was also one of the last times I saw my dad, because he doesn't live here anymore. He moved back to Honduras. So having that exposure to what people would consider third world is like, it has its beauty, it has its advanced parts, but I went to the places where my mom would tell me like, we didn't have like floors like this or electricity, like these modern fixtures that we all like kind of take for granted. And to see that, live that, and also going to Honduras 2 times and seeing how my dad's side of the family lived, and it's just rural farmland. This is like, for example, it was one of the first times I saw, I think it was a donkey. Just a fun fact, and seeing pigs and livestock running around, and seeing meat getting butchered in people's homes, and like seeing what the community is like. It's a way stronger sense of community over there. On New Year's Eve, because we would always go at the end of the year, the entire block, the whole residence is outside. They're cooking, they're dancing, there's music. It's a unified celebration that that my mom brought to me. She showed me that there is something to have pride in. The pride of being tico, being costarricense, and same for my dad, being hondureño. You know, Honduras has been, and I don't know if it currently is, but it was one of the most impoverished and dangerous countries in the world. And it just to have those connotations, and to see that they decided, you know, we're going to leave. My mom went like the legal way, let's say, through a scholarship. She got a scholarship to go to St. Louis Community College at Forest Park. And my dad, you know, traditional, undocumented, whatever that looks like. And to see that my mom was really to the books, like doing everything the right way, making sure everything's crossed and dotted. My dad hustle just by any means. And I feel like I'm a balance of the two, because I attempted to go to Webster. That was the, you know, you go elementary, middle, high school, college, corporate job, retirement, that secure route. I tried it. And that was what my mom advocated for me to do, being here. And then my dad, I always saw him just flipping stuff, any product. And just seeing that duality has empowered me to kind of take the baton and figure it out for myself, because I don't necessarily have footsteps to follow in. Like, I don't know my family past my grandparents. You know, in the United States, you all have the ability to know at least your great-grandfather or great-grandmother, and to know what legacy you're carrying on. I personally don't know what legacy I'm carrying on besides of my parents. And it is challenging for me to live with that, because, you know, I've created this sense of value through my life's work thus far. And to figure out what home is and what home means to me, Dutchtown is a home of mine, but it isn't, that's not an origin for me. That is not my end-all, be-all. I see that my home is where I feel at peace, and where I have the tools and the people that I need to continue being of service to the world. So if that means I'm in St. Louis, or if that means I'm out east or out west or out of the country, I think home is wherever I'm at peace.
Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing that, just from the sense of, one, you could, you know, being able to hear some of the challenges that come with having a background that holds multiple different identities. I think a lot of people can relate to that. But before I ask a couple more questions, I'm curious if you do mind sharing, you know, because you said that your dad flipped a lot of different things.
Yeah.
What's either the weirdest or funniest thing that you've seen your dad flip that you couldn't believe could happen?
Well, I would say the weird thing was probably the volume of what he would flip. Let's say, for example, I mean, people do it now, you know, because everyone's on this wave of
flipping and reselling.
Reselling, but also sustainability. Sustainability is a huge trend. You know, everyone wants to eliminate the fast fashion waste, and, you know, how much material and resources go to produce these cottons and fibers and all of this waste, and the inks and all that. But my dad, I saw him flip cars, like buy and resell cars. I saw him, what else? Well, that's one thing. But the main thing was he would go to the outlets, like Goodwill outlets. And when I was in middle school, elementary, going to Goodwill was frowned upon.
Yeah.
You know, that was frowned upon. I will even say Aldi was frowned upon. If anybody,
Wow.
if anybody has been there, Aldi was not hot. Now
Yeah.
it's like they have great deals and they got good produce and stuff.
I live in an Aldi, basically.
But let's say like my dad would go in there and see that shoes, like, not, I don't know if it's per se American made shoes, but well made shoes with quality materials was of value to people back home in Honduras. So he would get boxes this high, weighing like a couple thousand pounds in each box, and I would see like him weigh them. He would collect them, wash them outside in the backyard. Had like a tub of soap water, and then let them air dry in the sun. And I would just see, I did not understand what he was doing it for. Whole time I never understood until after the fact. And I was like, no, he's trying to get it. He's trying to get it because employment here was like, I used to see his check stubs when I looked into like old records at home, and I'd be like, wow, I couldn't imagine having made this much and trying to support a family. So having to go and be creative about how you make more money is the thing that I think subconsciously has driven me thus far to be creative and find new ways to generate revenue or to be of service to others that in turn generates revenue,
Right.
And I feel like he just saw value in something that your everyday citizen here in St. Louis would probably like, yeah, it's Goodwill, whatever.
Right.
Like, I'm going to go buy new shit.
Yeah. He found value in the mundane.
And sending it off over there, it was selling. It was selling, and he managed it from here, and then eventually it was like, yeah, I'm gonna go. I have to be in person. I gotta go be kind of like an owner operator kind of thing out there, and that's what it was.
Right. Yeah, and I think, to what you're saying too about the idea of, how, these blending of these, really what you're talking about is the blending of three different spaces. You talk about in the States, Costa Rica, Honduras, and all these things coming together to begin where you're creating these different values. You're seeing different senses of community as well too. You're seeing the different senses of what work ethic is, and we talked about this on a previous episode about this idea. We talked with Paul Chan about this idea of the grind as well too. So like, what does that look like? How do we value it? And so I think all these things come together, and it's interesting when you talked about, I could hear the excitement about how you talked about going home to where your mom was from, in the sense of community and celebratory, and how celebratory it was. And so I'm curious, when you look at like how all these different stories and journeys even lead to this moment, how do you think that impacts your personal creativity or the way that you interact with the world? Because, I hear you talking about, this sense of service and wanting to have something that is meaningful and impactful, while at the same time hearing the joy that you find from this, from this longer, I guess this seeking of not necessarily validation, but more so of trying to pay, like maybe it's more so homage almost, of being able to kind of, I don't want to say you're recreating the story, because there's a long lineage of folks before you, but you are more so like making sure that it's intentional and right, in like this sense of making your mark so the next person after you knows about the story.
Yeah. To give you more context, I'm an only child here. Like, I have others like step siblings, but in the other country, in Honduras. So the excitement comes from like, because I was always alone, and I just had a conversation with my parents about this. They were like, yeah, son, because I have a daughter now. I have a newborn daughter, and he was telling me like, make sure you socialize her way more than we did you. And when I heard that, I was like, That's so interesting, because I just went about my days in my life as a, preteen, teenager, just on my own. Like, my parents were working and I would be at home, like, studying or playing games and stuff. But to hear him say like the significance of socializing, I feel like that was a part of my life that I was not able to kind of like dig deeper into it. I feel like I am a bit of an introvert, and I feel like when I use my skills or my talents, I always try to evoke emotion through different mediums. So the excitement of like building business or helping others create what they want to see or being of service, I always see it as I'm an instrument of God and I have these abilities, so let me share what I know to make sure that you feel this eternal love and passion, and just it's all the things that I wanted, I want to make sure that others can feel the things that I always longed for. And I feel like to see somebody advance just makes me feel good. And what was the question? The sense of,
Yeah, I guess
use like three worlds.
because I guess maybe just in a way of kind of simplifying it even to an extent is, when you're looking at, this journey to where you're at now, how do you feel like, I guess when you're thinking about, your mom's from Costa Rica, your dad's from Honduras, you're here in the States living in St. Louis. Do you feel like, how do you feel those different journeys or different backgrounds have come together really to kind of maybe direct some of your creative practice? Because for me personally, I hear it coming through when you're talking about your dad and your mom, especially your dad.
Yeah.
Because I've seen the different iterations that you've gone through just even to getting to this point right now. So.
Yeah, I don't talk about it a lot, man. Like, this conversation I wish I had these conversations with, like, friends. I have them with my mentors, but like my friends, like people that I can like hit up and be like, yo, this is what's going on. I don't have that. And that's okay. But I get passionate about it because I always felt like you touched on seeking validation. I will admit I was seeking validation through my arts and through my talents for a period of my life. Definitely the period in which you met me at Webster. Because in high school, like middle school, I was a bigger, chubby kid and nobody really paid me any mind. Going into high school, I started to be more athletic and slimmed down, matured, and all these things, and then I got a lot of attention. But your self-identity, like the way, I think it's called your self-identity, or no, your self-image, like you can see yourself as like still being the big kid, but your body and your mind is completely different now that time has passed, but you still look at yourself with no confidence. Like nobody's looking my way. But once people started coming my way, I didn't know how to accept that attention, receive it. And being introverted, I feel like I let a lot of opportunities pass me because of being shy or holding my tongue. And there's a lot of things that happened at home that I'm like, yeah, let's say there's been a lot of like traumatic things that happen too that makes a young person not know how to regulate or process their emotions. I lived with that, and to see that now, I try to be very selective of what I share, or very conscious. of how I come off. But at the same time, when I worked in certain positions, they were like, bro, you got to be able to ruffle people's feathers, or like stand on what you stand on, and also like stand for something, like be firm. You don't have to be like the A word about stuff, but you still should know who you are. And I feel like over the time, I felt like me seeking validation when it came to the music or the art or the branding, I can never say that I started anything. I will never say I'm the only person in St. Louis to have done XYZ, because that's not true. And anybody who says they're the first person to do something is not true. There's nothing new under the sun. There's advancements and evolutions of things, in my opinion, but I can't, like, I've seen many things in St. Louis that, like, I'm the originator or this or that. It's like, nah, man, nah, that's not it. And for my case, I'm not the first person with a brand. I'm not the first artist. I'm not the first producer. I'm not the first business owner, none of that. But I've always studied all the people prior to me and, like, tried to, be a flag carrier in a sense. And I just trying to showcase what I'm about, show them what I'm made of. I was trying to seek validation, and for the wrong reasons. Mm-hmm. Like, I really lost myself. Hence, like, there's been times where I'll go hard. I'll drop, I'll release, I'll produce, and then I'll probably sacrifice 2 years or 3 months or a month and go cold. And that's because there's the ebbs and flows of the creative process. And you have to really live what you're living for people to feel what you want them to feel. Because people don't live the things that they share, in my opinion. And I feel like that's the thing, that you influence generations thinking that what they're doing is good, but is not. And I feel like for me, I've always had pure intention, and I always wanted people to be self-sustainable, or at least get on a path where they can rely on themselves and their skill sets and their values, because nothing that I do causes people harm. Like, none of my art, none of my products do that, but there's, like, let's say, like, the music scene in St. Louis, like, inside the hardcore shit, they talk about a whole lot of stuff that does not move the ball forward. And I feel like when it comes to that, it's like you can use that same energy towards different, like, outlets and strategize it, because you have the pull. Mm-hmm. You have pull. And I feel like you have to be able to know that your tongue and your energy can shake a whole room, can destroy everything, or create a new blissful life. So it's like I feel like I didn't realize the power of what I was doing, like being able to create what I can create. Like, I just don't see it like in school when they try to teach you how to do it. It's like I don't want to, like, lately I've been more visual and pairing visuals with music, and it's usually like really authentic moments and a positive message. But I know with those same skills, I can make things tarnishing people's names. I can, like, really harm communities thinking I'm doing good. Right. But the whole time, it's the power of the tongue. It's the power of the intention. So that's why for me, when it comes to the art and, like, business and socializing and influence and, like, the trajectory of the future, I'm very, like, strategic. I try not to be very impulsive, because I know the power that I have. Right. And when I was younger, I was trying to do anything to get noticed, trying to see what can give me the most likes, what can get me liked the most. And the whole time, me just sitting here is enough, because my presence is enough. And I felt invisible for a long time, you know?
Yeah.
So that's why, like, I don't talk a lot. I don't do monologues or, like, do the content where it's just me. I probably only did it once lately. But I've always just let my work speak for me, and I've always been somewhat of an enigma. And, yeah, that's the, like, essence of what I do.
Right. I appreciate that vulnerability and honesty about the journey because, like you said, a lot of times that doesn't get shared. So for you to be able to openly not just share it, but being able to have the self-awareness of where you started and how you're growing and understanding that there's still growth and work to be done as well too. And so to kind of add on to what you're saying, because of course you've done a lot of different projects and worked in several different spaces. Give me the point, or maybe the example, or maybe there's not a certain point in time, but what was, once you were going through this work, what was that one moment where you were like, yeah, I'm doing this work because I'm passionate about the work, not because it's here to validate others?
It was definitely when I was learning how to screen print. And screen printing is
a process.
Yeah, you've screen printed, right?
Yeah, I've screen printed before. Shout out to Tate Foley at Webster University.
Yeah, so
he taught me the game.
Yeah, screen printing, man. It was because when I first started UVA, I always attempted to get my goods made in St. Louis, but I got a lot of pushback. Always got pushback, where I was told that I have to go overseas and get it made. Couldn't do it here. That really was, how should I say? It was disheartening, because I knew I could do it. I know when my ideas are real. I know I can create them, but like to go through somebody else, it was a barrier. I'm not gonna say which companies I went to go and see if they can get things made, but they shot me down, bro. I was shot down so many times, told no, pop my bubble, all these things, and I'm like, I can't leave my ability in the hands of somebody else. So I took the initiative. I did the research, man. And that's the biggest thing that I want to reiterate to the younger generation. Do your research. Like, do your research. Like, it's good to have mentors, and it's good to have people in your circle who are more advanced than you, but you can't rely on them to develop what you want to see. Because I've been there, and when I work with the youth present day, I do see characteristics of people who just always want it done for you. And I feel like I understand, that comes with upbringing and all that, but I just know the power of, like, getting it on your own, like going to read a book or watching videos or going and read articles. Like, it helps. It expedites every vision and idea that you have, because there's no gatekeeping. And we live in a generation where it's available. I can look up something that's on the other side of the world that I would never have access to just by a Google search. So it's like, for me, doing that research and getting those no's, that's why screen printing was the biggest challenge, but that yielded the most results.
I can imagine too, especially as you were going through that process, screen printing makes you slow down too.
It does.
It's not, for folks that have screen printed before, you have to get the screen prepped. You got to find the image. You got to burn the screen.
Yeah.
You got to do, and then let's not talk about doing a multicolored layers.
And the registration.
And you got to have all those, and you got to have more screens to do all the different. So that is the cleaning process. That's a hot mess too.
Yeah, that's the part where if you don't get through that, and if you can't figure out how to expose your screen, you're gonna quit. I quit for a period of time because I was like, I don't have time for this.
Right, especially if you don't have the big equipment
and the money.
Yeah.
So, but I persisted through it. Like, you could talk to my mom, some of the old previous people in my life. They'll tell you that, yeah, when I was learning how to screen print, it was tough. But when I got it the first time, bro,
How did that feel?
euphoric. It was so euphoric because it's like, there's nothing that I can't do.
He was on cloud 9.
Yeah, and it was just in the moment, like, I had to, like, keep going, but it was significant also because I was working at Boost Mobile after Webster, just trying to make ends meet in my household, and I just remember I would always have to, like, sit there, and I dedicated 30 minutes every single day when I was sitting there just doodling, just doing drawings, and eventually I collected those. I had just entered Dream Builders for Equity. That's an organization that I work with closely, and there were, like, activities that we did in that summer program that I was also able to combine with my previous work, and I was able to make designs that during the time that I was making them were seen to be very valuable.
Right.
Like, I didn't produce volume. It was a scarce commodity, and I liked that. I liked it, and I will say this: there was a time where I felt like I fell off. There was definitely a time where I felt like I fell off, but that wasn't the case because I've always had more demand than supply, and I had to let a lot of people down. This is my first time sharing this. I had to let a lot of people down and not be able to come through with product because I was still with the trials and errors of quality control and making sure that I'm giving you something that I'm happy with. And I'm just not the person to just put anything out there. I'm a very thorough person. I really care about what a person receives from me. And I was like, I'm gonna make a lot of people not happy right now, and I can live with that because I'm making sure that I'm 100%. I'm making sure that my skills are on 10, making sure that my what is it called? Your living expenses are taken care of. Think about that. Trying to start a brand, trying to start anything.
Right.
If you don't have your living expenses covered, you can't think straight. And I learned that from one of my other mentors, Eric Wilson. He has ERG Gallery in I think it's Delwood, out in North County. The point is, that was one of my core memories. He was like, as long as you got your home taken care of, you'll have a level head. And when I finally got my first real job, once I left Boost, left college, it was in property management. So in the real estate space. And bro, once I started touching that money, like, I started to really be in a different zone, and being able to, like, understand myself and leave Dutchtown for a period of time and really unlearn and relearn and unpack a lot of the trauma that I experienced. And once again, whole time I was developing UVA, but I didn't have the bandwidth to scale. And, like, I didn't really have, like, a team. I was trying to go alone, doing it all alone. Like, there was a sense of pride in that, but a solopreneur, you can't really last long. Like, you have to be able to create a team or systems. And those are the two things that I didn't have, and I didn't even know what UVA was. I was selling something that I didn't even know what it was, and I couldn't live with that. So I was like, let's slow down. Let me make sure I'm being real with myself so I can be real with everyone else. And yeah.
Just real quick, because you've said UVA a few times. Can you break down what UVA is for the folks?
Yeah. So UVA International is like how Google is Alphabet. For me, UVA is the holding company, right? It's, for me, is my first venture into the business realm, and it was the platform that I used to promote and expose my talents and abilities to the world. So that was first as producing. It would be produced by Uva, like when I was making beats. But then once, because music was the music and visual art was the beginning, the origin. But once I realized that the way to really make money is through physical products, like something in hand, that's when the art transferred to clothing. So it's really, it's not a clothing brand. It's not like any specific thing. It's more so the engine that powers all of the things that I am, and that my morals and values. Because when I'm no longer here, Uva will still be a engine that powers many different things. I can say that Uva is the reason why House of Vision exists. And is not because Patrick exists, is because Uva existed through Patrick. Just like how Mike Woods, because of Mike Woods, Dream Builders exists, and Neil Richardson and Eric. Those three guys created Dream Builders, and because of Dream Builders, all of these other things exist. And same with Top. Because Top exists, Fam Establishment exists, and without Fam Establishment, once again, there's no House of Vision. So we all have these identities and entities, and it's the entity, the thing that you can disassociate with a physical person, and it's an idea and a mind state and a catalyst to creating, beautiful experiences and products that people need. So that's Uva. And to go back, Uva in Spanish is grape, like a physical grape. And the metaphor to the grape is when I initiated, I'm going to commit to being an artist or just being who I am, I felt like I was in my Uva stage, right? A grape is probably like 5 cents or a penny. But the metaphor is it has to be smashed, like fermented, just transformed. It goes through this whole fermentation process for you to get wine. And over time, aged wine is very valuable. I don't know any technicalities of wine, but 50-year-old wine, 100-year-old wine, or whatever it just seemed to be more valuable. And that's how I see myself in everything that I do with Uva. It is the appreciation of value over time. And that's the significance of Uva, the grape. And it's to be like a beacon to others to commit and understand that you're going to have to start as you are, but know that through the years, through the successes and the failures, mostly the failures, that's really where you build character. That's where you get all the information you need for the long haul.
I really like that visual, just because I think also when you're thinking about, this grapes into wine kind of thought process, it also takes repetition. You need more than one grape to be able to make a bottle of wine. So this overall process of this crushing and shaping and blending together over time is able to create this. Now, mind you, I don't have any wine background either, so folks with the wine background can break it down later for me. But I do think that's a really great visual of like what you're trying to create. You're trying to create something timeless. You're trying to create something that is, because the way that I hear it is, Uva is this creative outlet for whatever you decide, whatever direction you decide to go, whoever you decide to work with, as a platform, as kind of like a home base for the ideas to be able to grow as well too. And so
You said it better than I did.
Hey, I'm just here to help you out, man. You had it before me. My job is just to basically say what you said in a different way. So I think, it's really interesting when you talked about One Dream Builds for equity, because I think at least for me, especially through social media and other things, that's where I was seeing you becoming, yeah, like you were creating, the things with Yuva, but I think with Dream Builder for Equity, that was where I was seeing you outside of your own necessarily, your own space. Yeah, your own space.
Yeah, you're right.
And so I think it's really interesting because I think when I've watched your practice grow over time, I think being a part of Dream Builders for Equity, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, definitely elevated how you connected with folks. Because I feel like that's the same experience that I had with Antoinette Carroll and Creative Reaction Lab, because I was through their programming and things like that. It elevated me and connected me to folks and to new ideas that I would not have had on my own. And so I'm curious on, what that, process was like of being a part of Dream Builders for Equity. What did you just get involved because of some of the realtor background and experience that you have? What got you into that process to wanting to be a part of their program?
Yeah. Dream Builders for Equity came into my life in 2019. I believe it was 2019.
Everything blends together.
Yeah. I was going through a tough time at home. I had I had just kind of I didn't run away per se, but I definitely made an exit. I made an exit from where I was living due to things that were happening in there. And I lived with a family member, and I was working at Valvoline. But a relationship that I had in middle school, Charlie Cooksey, she had this nonprofit called Inspire STL. And Inspire STL was collegiate, preparatory, high school, all these things that prepared a student to go into a college readiness high school, then into a 4-year college. And through that relationship, I went through the entire process, landed at Webster. And then there was a moment where, I don't know, I always feel weird about bringing this up, about how we reconnected, but one of my mentor's husbands passed. He was I think he was the founder or the president of the Channel 9 network, Mr. Galmesh. A lot of people know the name Galmesh. And I reconnected there, and Charlie told me about Mike and what he does. And she essentially referred me to him, saying that I think this would be a great fit for you. And another thing that stood out during that time was she asked me so how's Uva? And she asked me do you know your profit and loss statements and all the technical stuff? I was I don't know anything.
He was I'm just trying to create.
I'm just selling, creating. So once we had that conversation and she saw where I was, it just made sense. So when I did go meet Mike, we hit it off. It was a great, we just share similar frequencies.
Yeah.
And he told me yo, the summer academy is about to kick off. Come to the registration. I had a shift at 6 a.m. at Valvoline that morning, and I'm you know what? No more. I'm gonna go to the registration. And I got involved into a whole community, a whole village, a whole network of hitters. I love it. It's literally the thing that I needed, because I was solo. I was literally running in circles trying to make things, just seeing what sticks. And I was already on my financial literacy journey. I was already interested in real estate, how money works, why it exists, and how to multiply it, how to keep it, and all these things. So them having a financial literacy aspect to their organization was just okay, that checks this. I'm college age at the time. All the students are high schoolers. So I'm a liaison or a mentor. There's high school, college, and then the executives. So I was in the middle, a middle child, and it was I just felt I just needed someone else to believe in me. You know, I just needed someone to believe in me. And I remember I had this design, this painting that I made, and I remember this is a power move on Mike's part. I'm gonna say this, and I appreciate you for this moment, Mike.
Shout out to Mike Woods.
Yeah, he was like, man, I love this piece. He's an art collector, right? And I'm like, yeah, bro, I just have this one Photoshop file of it. But if you want a physical one, I can make it, but I just don't got the money to make it. He was like, how much is it? I was like 200 or something. Some number like that. He goes, here, go make it. Opened the whole door. And I gave him the piece, and he was ecstatic. He took a picture of me, and I just looked back at that picture. I was so young. I didn't know where I was going or where. I didn't expect anything, really. Right. But it's just that belief. And he believed in me. Mm-hmm. And so did Top, so did all of the other members of Dream Builders. They knew there was something with me that we need to keep him close. And sure. I'm still there to this day.
And that's so awesome, because it is true, like having folks in your life that see more in you than you do yourself. Mm-hmm. You know, I can attest to that as well too, of having mentors that have been there that have elevated me when I didn't know I needed to be elevated at that time. Right. So that the fact that you and Mike have that relationship is really beautiful, especially being able to hear more of that between two men. I think a lot of times that you don't really hear that sense of elevation and things like that of, even the story of another man being able to say, I see value in you as well too. And so I think that is, that's really beautiful, man. And so I'm curious because, for some folks, definitely if you have not heard of Dream Builders for Equity and the work that Mike Wood's doing, please go and look up that work because it is incredible. But I'm curious less about Dream Builders for Equity because that's a different conversation, and more so of how did from Dream Builders to Equity did this thought of we're going to create House of Vision happen at, because Dream Builders for Equity is around homes, community building, community development, and not to say that those two don't have intersections, but for some folks, they would, if they know what House of Vision is, they'll be like, a clothing store and then building homes up on the north side and all over. That don't make sense. So talk about some of the connections there and why it makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. And I appreciate you bringing it up. Like House of Vision, it was a previous name prior, but so House of Vision started with myself, Top of Fam Establishment. He's also part of Dream Builders, and Mike Woods, president of Dream Builders. So Mike, he has many connections in the community, and there was this, he was in my ear about it, telling me, hey man, like we're thinking about maybe getting this location, like the details are still developing, but I want you to be involved. Like I know this is something that you can benefit from. And I didn't think too much of it. I was still like in the summer academy, being a mentor and intern and all that. And, of course, once the summer academy is done, I'm back at trying to make money. I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to make the next whatever. So he appointed Top and myself to be like to really drive this. So Top, he's just hustler, he's from that, right? Like really strong man, really strong character, and like no nonsense kind of guy. Like he wants to make sure what we do is right, because he's already heavily invested in the youth and in the community prior to it really being like as popular as it is now. Like it's always been a thing. Like there's always been philanthropy and all these things that impact the youth, but in the way that Top views it, it's way more close than like my dollars will do the work. It's like, no, I will do the work to make sure that these kids see themselves in a light that they would have not seen otherwise. So that's top. Mike, president, has the like the backing, that. And me, I had the screen printing and all of the artistic and creative like ability. Like I brought the screen printing process to the store, but really I need to, let me do it chronologically.
For sure.
So like 2022 is when we acquired the building, like or acquired the space, and it was me and Top. We were made responsible for figuring out what this space is going to be. And it's very vague now, but I do know what I did. I definitely created the spreadsheet breaking down all the costs of like materials and systems that were needed, like kind of like a blueprint, and Top all the input that he gave me and would be an advisor about how we would do this. But for sure, me and Top were like, we want to do local goods and services. That would be like what it would be if we do it. We also thought it could be like a healthy smoothie bar inside. Mm-hmm. We also thought about using it like to rent out and like do media there, because it is pretty spacious over there, and that's what we do. We're very into media. And I remember I said the word vision, or he said the word vision. And then we were just like, just vision. But then we were like, that sounds like a eye doctor, eye store, optics. Like that's not, I don't think that describes what we're doing. And then Mike was the one that, in thinking about his influence with Jay-Z, he was like, Hove, House of Vision, HOV. We ran with it. And then from there, the systems and like the skill set, I hadn't been screen printing for like 3 years, 4 years. Like I was done, because it takes a lot of money, time, energy. And I was just like, you know what, bro? And this is why UVA was not coming out, because I wasn't doing it and I wasn't delegating that task to anybody else. So it stopped with me. And with them, they were like, nah, like we have so many people, like so many organizations and companies that we can do their products. We can do McCarthy's products. We can do Gateway Global's products. All of these major corporations, we can be that, and that'll be a way to expose and generate revenue for the youth. So House of Vision became the name, and then I feel like I don't speak about this part of the story, but this part of the story is very significant to me, because of course I'm part of Dream Builders, but this project originally, like I felt like I was investing a lot into it, but I needed my needs met. I needed to make sure that my needs were met. Back to the point of your living expenses, right? And it wasn't happening necessarily. So I was like, I'm giving all of what I have right now, but I need something right now. So I had to make that decision where it's like, I have to go. I'm not bailing, but I can't continue to do this like this. So I went into logistics, and I was transparent with them about it. I was like, yeah, like this is gonna be the money that I need right now. And in April of that year, I found out that I was gonna be a father, and I was like, nah, bro, like I gotta stack this paper. I gotta make sure that I'm ready for this. Mentally, it took me into a different place, and I was like, my life is gonna change forever. And the decisions I make now will dictate my results of the future. So I took off 7 months of developing the project. And in the logistics space that I was in, it was just old school traditional sales, like calling, phones, like trying to sell, learning the sales process, understanding the psychology of why you need, like, you're going to tell me no, everyone's going to tell me no, but you're saying no to something that you need this, you need me to transport these goods. Like, we would transport produce, raw materials. The backbone of this country is logistics. So understanding that, I felt like I was sacrificing a lot to my team for not being present, but whole time I was developing more skill sets to bring to the table when I come back. And 7 months in, I was like, Top would call me and be like, yo, Pat, like, this is what's going on at the store. Or, Pat, there's really not much going on at the store. Like, what's up? Like, what are you going to do, man? And, like, I would just have these conversations. I would be at that desk, 2 monitors, 2 phones.
Two phones.
Yeah, 2 monitors, 2 phones. I was a freight broker.
So were you like this some days?
Yeah, like, I got somebody on this line at 2,000, and I got somebody on this line at 1,500, and that's a $500 spread. And sometimes they're bigger, sometimes they're smaller. But the point is, I realized that waking up 6 a.m., like, doing this work, not it. It was not it for me. So I was like, I'm gonna take a leap of faith. And I also read this book. Very important that I read this book. It's called The Art and Science of Respect by James Prince. If you all know James Prince, he was the founder of Rap-A-Lot Records back in the 90s. And there was a chapter in which the record label that he partnered with, or the distribution, they were making more money than his talent. And he was like, you're essentially taking food off our plate, and these terms cannot stand like this. So he said he did certain things that he had to put pressure on these executives to change the terms and get new paper, new verbiage, and they got a reasonable amount of money for the things that they were producing. And I learned a huge lesson from that. Like, make sure we got our terms straight, make sure it's documented, make sure I know my value. And I feel like once I started to have that, like, really solid in me, to be able to have that ask because of the asks that are being asked to me, from me, I was like, no, let's make sure it's a win-win. And it was always gonna be a win-win, but I just felt like I needed that for myself during that time.
And I think, to what you just said, I think is really important too, that you had to know your own value, because even whether it's starting a new project, something that's already, the structure's already built, but more so it's even about the people, because you can have folks around you with good intentions that may not necessarily know how to tell you what your value is. So the fact that you were able to step away, reassess, and I feel like that's really interesting, especially with your story, is that you've had these moments to where you've been in it, you found out that wasn't for you, so you have enough self-awareness to step away and say, all right, let me reassess this and go back to what I'm passionate about.
Yeah, and that's very tough, man, walking away. Walking away just feels like you're giving up, but it's not.
So it's funny you say that, because we actually had the conversation last week with Paul Chan. His exhibition is, well, I guess hopefully you're listening to this in the moments of, how long does the exhibition
down there
go?
right now?
Yeah.
That's Paul Chan's work?
From now to September 11th, yeah. But if you're listening to this between now and September 11th, it can get to the Contemporary Art Museum St. Louis. You'll be able to see his work. If not, his work has been shown all over the world. You'll find it.
Cool.
But we talked about, that idea of, failure, and that failure is not a bad thing. Because for some folks that idea of failure is very negative. And so I said, maybe it's less about it being failure, because failure is definitely a part of a process. And more so it's about letting go, being able to let go of something, even if it's something that you have a direct relationship to, it brings you a sense of comfort, whatever it may be, but being able to let go of it, because until you let go of it, you can't hold on to the next thing. You can't grab the next thing.
Correct.
So,
man, Yeah, I left for 7 months. Decided, through call. I remember I was crying on the phone, and I'm very vocal about me crying. I've always been a crybaby in my own way, but it's tears of passion because I know there's something greater for me and for others. And I was outside that building, and I'm talking to Top, and I love that I have Top in my life because he's maybe 10 years older than me, and he's gone through way more stuff than me as far as like hardships and character building experiences. And he was like, bro, this is what it takes. This is what it takes. If you want to level up, if you want to boss up, you gotta do these things. Like, it's scary. I know. He says I've been there because he's been self-made, like, being his own man and being his own, boss. So it's normal for him. But for me, I was like 24. Yeah, 24. I think I was having these conversations at 24, like about to start this business and about to be a father. And
You had a lot going on.
yeah, 100%. And I feel like I made the right decision. I took a leap of faith, and I went back. And I also got to say this, Lucy Red was definitely a huge part of the House of Vision. And I remember when I went back to the store, it was a bit awkward because it's like, all right, Pat, you're here and you're doing all this work, but we still haven't had a conversation about what's happening. And they were like, so what's up, man? I'm like, let's do it. I didn't say too much. I said, let's do it. I'm in. And since then, every week we just started developing. Mm-hmm. First it was furnishing, art, where do we get the vendors, what are our systems, what are our procedures. This equipment is not cheap. Like, we spent thousands of dollars to get the equipment. And of course, like, just to start up, I remember when I did the spreadsheet, I was like, we're going to at least need $40,000. And a crazy thing is, he was like, there's this thing called the proof of concept that we need to achieve. A proof of concept. And, I was distraught by it because I know we don't need to spend $40,000 immediately, but in order to get this up and running like
the way you wanted to,
like we needed to, that's what it's going to take. But he was like, start off with 7. Start off with 7. And I'm like, 7,000 is one purchase. And that was the screen press. Mm-hmm. and the flash heat. That wasn't screens, that wasn't inks, that wasn't the embroidery machine, that wasn't furniture, that was nothing. But that's a huge lesson for me too. Is like, you have to have that proof of concept before we just start throwing money at something. And then eventually, me and Top committed to it, and we just slowly started to get the notoriety. We slowly, for me in particular, I had to redevelop my skill sets. Mm-hmm. Because I hadn't screen printed in a while, and we already had orders coming in. We had relationships with people that's the real sauce of the House of Vision, is because we already had a foundation through Dream Builders. So it was just like, just go ahead and slide it on over. And we would service them and build those relationships. And I remember one day we still had the sales floor was still pretty empty, but I remember we had a soft opening. We never truly had a grand opening, but the soft opening did feel like a grand opening. But it was like, if you know kind of thing. Right. And still to this day, we are not heavily promoting who we are and what we do, not because we don't want to, but because, back to self-awareness, if we hit the button and we like max out on our capacity, we're going to be shooting ourselves in the foot. Like, why would I put myself in a position to receive an order of 10,000 units
and you can't,
if I start marketing and saying that we do this, but I know we can't fulfill that? So I'm not going to do it. We're not going to do it. It's not the smart decision. We're going to do it at our own pace and make sure that we, like, and we're also training students. They're 18, 17 years old. Like we've gotten some trained to where they handle orders on their own, and that's a huge weight off of my plate and Top's plate, because we did everything at first. And in particular, the soft opening, like I mentioned, we had the first 2 shirts that we sold was an Old North and a Hyde Park shirt. And the Hyde Park shirt got into the hands of somebody's husband who she was like, I want this shirt. And she works for the St. Louis American. And that's how she came through the door. Like, I saw this shirt. My husband or somebody wore it, and I want this shirt. So we sold it to her, and then we chatted a little bit, and she was like, I'm with this news publication. I want to do a story. And I was like, no way. I've never I've only heard about that in movies or in other people's success stories, but to see it in my face, bro, it was crazy. So that happened, and then eventually the next level up was when we connected with the St. Louis Fashion Fund and the SLDC.
What's SLDC?
St. Louis Development Corporation.
Cool.
Yeah, and the Fashion Fund is like they're wanting to revamp fashion, because like Washington Avenue was a fashion district, and they want to bring that back. And what's crazy is I remember I used to go to their meetings and their talks, and I would be so mesmerized about the things that they were doing, but I was an outsider. Whole time, I'm like, one day I'll work with you. One day I'll be present. And it wasn't until they came to me, not me directly, but came into a space that I created. Like, I'm part of the mastermind of this creation, and they love what we do. And I'm like, interesting how things played out.
It all worked out the way it was supposed to.
Yeah, bro. It goes back to like seeking that validation. I feel like when I stopped looking for it and I just started doing the work, it came to me.
You were running from what you were supposed to, and once you stopped.
Yeah, once I stopped, it came to me, and that's a huge part of the story.
Mm. I'm curious too for you, which gives, they're probably both different types of joy, but which one right now is you're more passionate about, when you get to create your own vision or when you get to pour into someone else's?
Pour into somebody else's.
Why?
Pouring into somebody else's, I have always had this thing of not wanting to be in the spotlight. Like, there was, for example, homecoming court. Mm-hmm. There's this freshman, senior, sophomore, all that.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do it, but somebody submitted my name and I won. But I was like, not trying to do that. Like, I'm a nobody. Don't do that. But they see it differently. So once I already did my own products, I already mastered it for myself. Now it's like I don't have to worry about it being my face or my designs anymore. I can just plug in my skills. And now, like, at the store, we have all these different brands, or all these different companies come to the store and they get their products done because I already learned how to do it for myself. So it's less pressure on me, like, will the people like it? It's more so I can just focus on quality. And I feel like, to say that I had part in somebody else's success it just feels way better.
The way somebody else can say and sit back and watch you and say, I remember when.
Yeah. It's a win-win.
For sure. Yeah, I think it's really beautiful that you're able to see, I guess, that idea of the fruits of your labor in a different way. Being able to, see that because of the things that you learned and the things that you had to go through, you can now share that with somebody else in a positive way. To now that helps them maybe potentially have to, navigate some of those different pitfalls, or even just going through that process of trying to figure out, because I can imagine too, you probably have some conversations around validation with some of those students as well too, about the work is the work,
The work is the work.
So it's really
Facts.
cool to be able to hear how even still at an early age, you're still able to find ways of being able, one, not only to give back, not only just to someone else, but also to what you were talking about earlier, giving back in a way about around the things that you wish you had as well too. And so I think it's really powerful that you're in that position and aware of that, to be able to do it not just because it's a job, but because there's a level of deep passion and intentionality around that as well too.
Thank
So
you.
you're doing good work, Pat, man.
Appreciate it, man.
Yes. So as we wrap up this podcast, we have our final kind of question, essentially, that we ask every guest. And it's a two-part question. So the first part is, what do you love most about St. Louis? And then the second part is, what do you most want to see change?
What I love most about St. Louis as of lately is the soccer stadium.
It is pretty sick.
Yeah, I love it. Like, I remember going to Chicago to see a World Cup qualifying match, and just the energy that it brings and my passion and love for soccer is so having that at home is amazing. And then two, it's like a void was filled for all St. Louis folks who love soccer. Like, I remember the only time we had a soccer game here was at Busch Stadium. It was like Argentina versus some other team, and they made the baseball field a soccer field.
Yeah, I remember that. They've had a few baseball games. I mean,
Yeah.
soccer games down there. I think they
Yeah.
had like Arsenal here one time
Really?
too. Maybe I might be totally
Yeah, I don't
wrong,
remember
but
that, but I believe
it was
you.
pretty sick.
And I love a lot of things about St. Louis. Like, I love the options that we have here. Although once you live here long enough, you start to kind of go through all the options, and then you just start repeating the same stuff. But definitely, what's fresh and new is the soccer stadium and everything that interconnects, especially the heart section. They call it the heartbeat, where the flags and the drums, like those kind of things. Like, when I was playing FIFA as a kid, or like, going to Chicago and seeing Honduras play versus the USA, and how passionate Hondureños are about soccer. That just reminds me of like what a unified people can bring. So I feel like if I'm able to facilitate an experience like that, to have all those people in one setting, cheering and shouting and just being themselves, whether if it's for music or an experience or a game, whatever, like, I love those kind of things, like live events, like big concerts. I love it. And what the second question is, what do I want to see change
Yeah.
about St. Louis? Let me think about that. I would say how we utilize our resources. And this is like a personal thing that, like, because there are homeless people in St. Louis. There are people who don't have. And, like my parents, they're from other countries. So they're like, as long as you are able-bodied and stuff, you should be able to, do something. But that isn't always the case. So what I think is like what I would do to change is like, it would, of course, I would need to be able to offer these things. But like, if I see somebody, I'm like, I would kind of like take them under my wing and understand how they got in this position, and like, what are your skills, or what do you know? And if there is something that you don't specialize in, let's figure out something that you can do that's already in my network, and then figure out how to get them involved so they can start to be self-sufficient. And like, if it comes down to like understanding like traumas that they need to, just get that personalized approach, I feel like that would be really cool. And then like the resources, we have all this land and all these houses and spaces that could be occupied. and that's already the mission of Dream Builders, right? So it's like, I mean, it's gonna take years and decades of this to happen, but you know, we really can house way more people than we think, you know? And just like back to the home for me is peace, where peace is. So that bringing peace to St. Louis in that way would be the thing that I would change.
I see no reason why that vision that you just shared cannot actually come to fruition.
Yeah.
And so, like you said, is that it takes one idea and a group of enough crazy folks to believe in it for you to go to that next level. And so we look forward, everyone looks forward to seeing, you know, not from a sense of production, but from a sense of who you become and how this process and journey works out for you. And so really excited, Pat, to see all the other things that you're going to be able to touch and help grow, and also how you're personally going to be able to shape what St. Louis will be in the future. So thanks so much for your time today, man. This has been a great conversation.
Likewise, thank you.